according to Politico, the concerns about Biden's age and mental fitness are overblown. Politico cites two of Biden's doctors who say, quote, he's every bit as sharp as he was 31 years ago and, quote, more than capable of handling the rigors of the campaign and duties of being president. Let's welcome in tonight's panel, senior fellow at the London Center for Policy Research, a former Marine Gunnery Sergeant, Jessie Jane Duff. Also with us, columnist and author Ellis Hennikin. All right, folks, let's get started. Jessie Jane, this campaign ad, strong, steady leadership, is that the vibe you're getting from Biden right now?
You know, Joe Biden has been in government, over 40 years, and I don't know or recognize any leadership that he had ever provided this nation. When he goes onto the campaign trail and he mixes up the Parkland shooting and starts discussing how he had seen those kids come up to the White House when he was not even in office at that time, these are critical faux pas. The deals that his son did with China, he's going to have to answer to that. When he tries to suggest that China is not a threat, when we have them building up in the South China Sea and influencing everything from South America to Africa with buildup of military or oil reserves, we're looking at a very critical state with China. And then let's not even mention how he supported the Iran nuclear deal, which will allow and was going to let Iran fall through the cracks and eventually have a nuclear weapon. I think he has a lot that he has to answer for under the President Obama's leadership and also his lack of leadership.
Ellis, the other thing in that commercial that may be obvious to folks who watched it is the number of times Joe Biden mentions Barack Obama, the things they worked on together, saving Obamacare. Obviously, he's wrapping his arms around Obama, but Obama hasn't done the same thing to Joe Biden. Why not? Anybody but Trump. Seriously, that's what this whole thing is about, right? I mean, Democrats care about one thing. All these candidates, 27 or 460, however many of them there are, every one of them has one thing that calls out the Democrats. They are not Donald Trump. So every one of them has some strengths and weaknesses. So let's talk about Biden for a second. First of all, as we know, most people don't have the bleak view that Jesse does. Most people out in America, love the guy, think he's pretty much okay. Of all of the Dems, he is the person who reaches the furthest across to the right. Moderates, folks in places like Michigan and Wisconsin, those swing states in the Midwest. In fact, even a lot of Republicans, including some major Republican politicians, have established very good working relationships with Joe Biden over the years. That's his selling point. But, Ellis, what you're telling us is that this is going to be a settled situation for Democrats. They don't really have anybody they're excited about. They're going to settle on Joe Biden. Settle nothing. No. That's exactly the wrong way to put it, John. They want to beat Donald Trump, okay? All of these people are miles ahead of Donald Trump. You pick any, close your eyes and pull one out of a bag, and I will be for that person. That's what most Democrats are today, I think. Jesse, is that a winning message for 2020? Anybody but the current guy in the Oval Office?
Not at all. When you're looking at the robust economy that we have, low unemployment rates, when we're looking at national security at a stronghold right now under this president, when we had $700 billion that were cut out of our military, trust me, my friends that were on active duty were tired of pitching parts out of old planes to make the new planes work. I mean, we really were in a bad state at that time, and most people have not forgotten that. With wages on the rise, with bringing jobs back into America, we have over 500,000 new manufacturing jobs when we had 200,000 less under the last 2 years of President Obama. You know, maybe Democrats don't feel good about President Trump, but if they have a solid paycheck and the economy is strong, it's a hard argument to beat him. And, you know, Joe Biden wants to run on the coattails of President Obama. Well, that's just what Hillary Clinton did, probably with her own husband. How did that work out? You have to have your own legacy. You have to have your own message, and he doesn't have one.
Well, he doesn't seem to. The other thing, too, when it comes to Barack Obama, Ellis, is this report from the New York Times. Wait. What do you mean he doesn't seem to? He's got a very clear message, right? I mean, don't throw off a line like that. Well, yeah, you understand exactly where he is philosophically, don't you? I mean, he's a moderately liberal Dem running against a president who, despite all the glowing commendations that Jesse just gave him, still has the lowest historic approval rating of any sitting president
president in modern times. All that wonderful stuff, and yet only 40%. He can never even break 40%. There's something wrong here. Don't you guys recognize that?
No, he's actually polled very well with Rasmussen, so that's not true.
Oh, I'm sorry. There's some crazy poll that has it, but the vast majority of polls have him with very low ratings. Come on, you guys need to explain that.
Rasmussen's very reputable.
He has approval ratings similar to where President Obama's were at this point in his presidency. His disapproval ratings may be a little bit. Ellis, check the polls. His approval ratings are similar to where Obama's are. His disapproval ratings are higher. I'm trying to, Ellis, I don't know what polls you're looking at.
His entire presidency, he's been underwater his entire presidency. He's never had the approval of half of the American people.
You talked about his
approval ratings. You guys can deny it.
Low. Ellis, stop. Just stop, because you're wrong. Why
do you deny it?
I'm not denying. I'm telling you the truth. You're talking about approval numbers, and I'm not going to. Ellis, I'm not going to keep doing this with you. We're going to move on. The Biden campaign is also kind of trailing off when it comes to their online fundraising. That's a sure sign that some enthusiasm in the campaign might be trailing off. Meanwhile, when you look at what's happening with Elizabeth Warren's campaign, look at the crowds she's having. That might indicate that Joe Biden has a little something to be worried about. Ellis.
Oh, clearly there are many other important and wonderful candidates. Elizabeth Warren may be the nominee. I mean, we don't know. This is very, very early in the process. That's why we have caucuses and primaries, to see who ends up on top. All I'm saying.
Thank you, Professor Hennigan. Thank you for that lesson.
But I mean, that's the point.
Here. You talk about the centrist message where Joe Biden stands, but you see the momentum with Elizabeth Warren, who is way far to the left, and you're going to see Joe Biden. He's trying to
John, both of these parties, John, the passion in both of these parties is at the extreme. The extreme people like Jessie is super, super passionate, but they're way over on the edge. In the Democratic Party, the greatest passion is on the left.
You don't need to drag my name into your talking points. Don't drag my name and call me being extreme. You represent Democrats, then do that eloquently and fairly. I'll represent who supports the president. Instead, you're sitting there bickering and fighting with people. Why don't you just present your position without arguing with us, and maybe things will run a lot smoother.
Oh, thank you very much.
And we'll try to do that, guys. We're going to go to commercial break.
This is a rough room here. Tough room. My gosh.
It is a tough room, Ellis. When you spit inaccuracies, we're going to hold you accountable. All right, U.S. Steel plans to halt production at a Michigan plant, resulting in a temporary layoff of up to 200 workers. The announcement no doubt puts a damper on President Trump's claim that the industry has been thriving under his leadership. See? President Trump is downplaying the concerns about a recession right now, but we're hearing about job layoffs. What do you think? Should we be concerned about the economy?
Well, not really. I think that, Michigan announced that this was a temporary layoff, first of all. And in aluminum and steel jobs that have come, 145,000 have come since President Trump took office, first of all. Second of all, Toyota has made a promise of 22,000 jobs in the United States with a $13 billion investment. Now, let's not forget, we lost 2.5 million jobs to China in the first decade of the 21st century. The first decade alone, we lost 2.5 million jobs. We're bringing them back with 145,000 more in aluminum and steel, this temporary layoff of the 200. Let's hope that the president is going to be able to be successful with these tariffs, because what happens is forcing American companies to come back to the United States and do business here by giving them the tax incentives, taking away the opportunity for the Chinese to profit off of our jobs and get our jobs back into America. 500,000 new manufacturing jobs alone in this country since President Trump took office.
Well, the economy will be one of the biggest issues facing voters in 2020. We'll see what comes of it. We got to wrap it up there. We are out of time. Ellis, Jessie, great to see you both. Thanks for coming on tonight.